Can a seemingly lower sanction change the fate of a Formula One team in full season? Today we explore how a simple pressure adjustment in the tires could mean much more for Ferrari and its ambition to return to the top. Everything started in the mythical Autodromo Enzo and Dino Ferrari, where Ferrari, driven by the emotion of running before his people, hoped to consolidate himself as a candidate for the title. However, instead of starting with a dominant performance, Maranello's team ran into an unexpected stumbling. In the first free training session of Emilia Romagna 2025, the FIA commissioners detected a technical infraction in the Charles Leclerc car. The fault was clear. The team adjusted the pressure of the tires without following the established regulatory procedure, an omission that could not go unnoticed by the strict regulations of Formula One. The specific infraction violated what is stipulated in the Technical Directive 003G, Section 2G.2. This protocol requires that before modifying the pressure of the tires, temperatures must be recorded. In this case, Ferrari did not comply with that crucial step, which led to an economic sanction of €5,000. Although it might seem a smaller figure for a team of this caliber, the sanction uncovered something deeper. A basic error in one of the most controlled aspects of the technical regulations. A detail that, in such a competitive environment, can make a difference between success and failure. The most striking thing was that Ferrari's own representative accepted the lack of commissioners, without trying to justify or minimize what happened. This admission not only confirmed the infraction, but also revealed a worrying lack of internal control. In a team with the infrastructure and personnel of Ferrari, that such a basic procedure is ignored during an official session raises serious doubts about the operating protocols in Maranello. Was it an isolated human error? Or are we facing a symptom of a team that is losing precision in key moments? The FIA, being a free practice session and not a decisive instance as a classification or career, opted for an economic and non-sport sanction. This could have been much more serious if the error occurred in conditions that affect the direct competitive result. However, although the penalty seems benign on the surface, its impact is much more symbolic. It exhibits an oversight by a team that cannot afford technical fissures if you want to seriously challenge McLaren and Red Bull in this season 2025. The sanction is the reminder that even at home the pressure can play a bad pass. This technical error in Imola cannot be considered an isolated event. Ferrari has already starred several problematic episodes since the 2025 season began, indicating that we could be facing a broader trend. In the China Grand Prix, for example, both cars were disqualified by not complying with the regulatory minimum weight. That a team like Ferrari, with decades of experience and resources, does not control something as basic as the weight of the car is alarming. It is not about strategic failures or bad decisions on track. They are regulation errors of procedure, and that reveals structural cracks within the equipment. This non-compliance pattern begins to raise suspicions about the internal control system that Ferrari is using to validate its technical operations. Each Formula One team operates with an obsessive rigor, because it knows that a single technical error can cost points, positions, or even championships. But when the failures are repeated with this frequency, you have to wonder if there is a systemic failure, if the routines and verifications that these errors should avoid are really working. And if they are not, then the sanction in Imola is only the visible symptom of a deeper disease. The most worrying thing is that these types of errors not only affect the immediate performance, but also undermine the morale of the team and erode the confidence of the pilots. When a pilot enters the garage and cannot fully trust that his car is within the regulation, the internal dynamic suffers. In a sport where communication between pilot and engineer is key, and where confidence in the machine is essential to compete to the limit, this type of doubts can have an invisible but devastating impact. In addition, there is an external factor that cannot be ignored: public perception. Ferrari is not any team. It is the most emblematic brand of motor racing, the one that carries on their shoulders the expectations of millions of fans worldwide. Each error, each sanction, each technical failure not only affects its results on the track, but also damages its reputation. And in a year where the championship is more open than ever, the pressure to recover the lost terrain only grows. The sanction in Imola, therefore, is not a closed episode. It is a warning signal that Ferrari cannot afford to ignore. The technical problems outside the regulation were only the prelude to what was seen on the track for the rest of the weekend. Ferrari failed to capitalize on his condition as a local in Imola, and the performance of his two pilots left more questions than answers. Charles Leclerc ended up in the 6th position in the second free training session, being almost half a second of the fastest time marked by Oscar Piastri. Lewis Hamilton, meanwhile, did not even get into the top 10, classifying in the 11th place. For a team that prepares all year to shine before its audience, the result was disappointing. On a technical level, both pilots agreed on the same critical point. The SF25 brake system is failing. Leclerc was particularly direct in his radio comments, describing the brakes as horrendous, and pointing out serious problems in the entry of key curves such as 5, 9, and 11. These are not superficial observations. When an elite pilot like Leclerc makes a trial of that caliber, it means that the problem is structural and directly affects the confidence that can be deposited in the car during a launched return or an overtaking maneuver. Lewis Hamilton, meanwhile, continues with its adaptation process to Ferrari, and the challenge has been more complicated than expected. Used for 12 years to carbon industry braking systems in Mercedes, you must now readapt your style to the Brembo brakes of the SF25. This change not only implies a modification in the braking technique, but also in the way of entering curve, in the sensitivity to the touch of the pedal, and in the thermal management of the discs. For a pilot who seeks to make a difference since the first year, these difficulties are a literal and symbolic break. All this translates into a loss of competitiveness that directly hits Ferrari's aspirations in the championship. While McLaren and Red Bull refine every technical detail to maximize their opportunities, Ferrari seems to be trapped between resolving basic errors and facing structural failures of his car. Time urges. The season does not expect anyone, and every weekend in which they are not at the highest level, it is an opportunity that vanishes in the fight for the title. The sanctions, brake problems, and bad track results are not isolated chapters, but parts of the same story that is increasingly complicating Ferrari's present. Although the sanction to Ferrari and Imola may seem like a simple economic fine, its true impact is much deeper and more symbolic. In a sport where each tenth account, where smaller decisions have gigantic repercussions, an infraction like this cannot be taken lightly. It's not just about 5,000 euros. This is what it represents: an operational vulnerability in a team that has historically been synonymous with technical excellence. When Ferrari in his own territory fails in a basic procedure, the message that is projected is fragility, not strength. The modern Formula One is ruthless. Each team, each engineer, each pilot is at the limit of the possible, and is precisely where the championships are defined. While McLaren executes almost perfect weekends and Red Bull presses from his technical trench, Ferrari is battled with sanctions, inefficient brakes, and a car that does not respond as he should. This context makes the fine not an isolated incident, but another sign that something is not working correctly within the Maranello structure. At a competitive level, the damage is already done. The loss of trust, both internal and external, is one of the most corrosive effects that a top-level team can suffer. The rivals notice it, the media amplify it, and the tifosi, always passionate and demanding, begin to question if the team has what is necessary to fight on equal terms. In this sense, the sanction works almost as a red alert for Ferrari's high controls. It is not enough to have a fast car, you have to have an impeccable team behind, and that is precisely what has been in doubt. The ironic thing is that all this happens in a year where the championship is more open than ever. There is no absolute dominator, and the opportunity to recover glory is available to Ferrari if they manage to order their mistakes. But for that they need an urgent change in their internal processes, a thorough review of each technical protocol, and an iron commitment to precision. The Imola fine must be taken as what is really a symptom of something deeper, a reflection of a vulnerable Ferrari that, if it does not react in time, could see its dream of returning to the top of motoring. The sanction of the FIA to Ferrari and Imola has opened a crack that goes far beyond a simple fine. This episode is not just one more note in the weekend report, it is a reflection of a team that, in its attempt to return to the top of Formula One, continues to stumble upon errors that should be more than surpassed. In a sport where excellence is not optional but mandatory, these repeated technical failures not only compromise results, but also sow doubts about Ferrari's real capacity to sustain a competitive campaign throughout the season. From the disqualification in China to the problems of brakes in Imola, and now this basic breach of procedure, Ferrari has been accumulating errors that not only affect in sports, but also in emotional and symbolic. It is not about lack of talent or a badly designed car. It is a team that seems not to be executing with the millimeter accuracy required by the current Formula One. And the worst part is that there is not a single factor to blame. It is a sum of details that, together, erode the solidity that Ferrari needs to project if he wants to win. But even in the midst of this crisis, there is still room for reaction. The season is long, and Ferrari has the resources, pilots, and technical knowledge to turn the situation around. What you don't have is time to lose. Every weekend counts, And every error like Imola is a misguided opportunity in front of rivals who do not forgive. This sanction, however small, must mark a turning point. It is now or never. Ferrari must decide whether to accumulate errors or if he will transform this vulnerability into the fuel that drives him to fight, really, by the 2025 championship.